Last on Everdark. Balthazar realizes that he has to mind-wipe Ray the Acolyte because he's become problematic. But if Balthazar thought he was getting out of this evening with just that hard choice, he was wrong. Damon was challenged by some of his own people. Everdark, Episode 21, On Raven's Wings. Julian felt fine tremors running through Damon's clasped hand in his. He gently rubbed his thumb against the back of that shaking hand while they followed Arceus through the house. As Arceus spoke on the phone to acolytes in the coach house about preparing for their arrival, Julian thought of how the Vampire King had been so nonchalant about using his powers. But Julian knew now that it had strained Damon's already depleted energy reserves potentially to their breaking point. Julian covered their clasped hands with his free one and squeezed, willing his own strength into the immortal. The Vampire King looked down at him with a mixed look of surprise and pleasure, but also with some consternation.
"I don't think anyone else can tell how exhausted you are,"
Julian sent. A faint frown appeared on Damon's plush lips. "You should not be taking care of me. I should be taking care of you. I am the master. I am the king. I am the one you should lean on, not the other way around." Julian suppressed a sigh and shook his head.
"I'm not some damsel in distress, and neither are you. We should be leaning on each other, like partners. And tonight, you need a little help. You can't deny that."
Though Damon did not respond to this at first, Julian sensed the Vampire King's dissatisfaction with it. He didn't think it stemmed from any idea of superiority exactly. It was Damon's view of himself, as the king, and first among equals, the protector and the warrior, the one to be taking on the challenges everyone else fled from. "After I feed and rest, I shall be myself again," Damon finally answered.
"And until you are, I'll be right beside you. Just like I was when William tried ripping your throat out."
Julian could still feel the iron grip he'd held William's wrist in. This time, Damon grinned. "You are quite pleased with yourself about that?"
"Hell yeah. I didn't even think about doing it. It just happened all on its own. I was a badass."
Julian grinned back. "You were much stronger and faster than he was. He will consider this fact later that one so young as you, who has not fed, was able to stop him."
"You didn't seem surprised that I did that,"
Julian pointed out. He'd wondered why that was. If his reflexes were lightning quick, then Damon's had to be double that, so the Vampire King could have blocked William even before he had. Damon shrugged. "I was not. You are my fledgling. Of course you would be stronger and faster than any other here. So I knew you could take him, and that would allow you to start to garner respect." Julian snorted.
"Why does it seem like you're saying that you are the only reason I won?"
"Because it is. My blood." Julian raised his eyebrows, but Damon's expression was serene. He had no compunctions about believing in his superiority, thinking on how easily he handled William and all the vampires. Maybe he was right. Damon continued. "But you survived my blood. No one else has. So there is something inherent in you that allows you to accept such strength."
"Might doesn't always equal right, you know. People shouldn't be picked to lead solely because they're strong,"
Julian argued. "You are correct. I am far more than just stronger than all others," Damon answered magnanimously. Julian let out a soft guffaw.
Okay. I see how it is. You're perfect."
"No, I am the king," Damon answered solemnly. "I must be more, so I have made myself more. You will see." They passed out of the house now, and were following a path through flowers towards a large coach house in the back of the property. The night air was redolent with the scent of flowers and freshly dewed grass. Julian took in a deep breath and almost felt dizzy from all the scents he was able to pick out. There were rose bushes to his left, an apple tree in the far corner, jasmine along the fence, and a running brook that they passed over on a small footbridge. He forced his eyes open as he realized they had nearly closed and focused once more on Damon. The trembling was still there.
Don't get me wrong. The way you handled things with William and all the others was really noble, kingly.
Julian struggled to find the words to describe how well Damon had behaved.
I mean, you could have just crushed all of them. But not only did you defuse the issue with Heath and Celine, but you made what you said seem like a benediction. I know that Balthazar appreciated that.
Damon did not say anything again for a long moment. I did it for you. Julian frowned.
You mean you agreed with my reasoning, right?
Yes, and no. I did it because you asked me to. And upon reflection, it was the right thing to do. Damon admitted. But I mostly did it because you wished for it, and you would have been upset if I had not. Julian was the one to be stunned into silence this time.
That's a pretty big deal.
You are my fledgling. You have more power over me than you know. That was said so softly that Julian almost didn't hear it.
I'll keep that in mind, so I don't abuse it.
Julian assured him, and squeezed the hand that was trembling more than before. That squeeze steadied Damon. Arceus stepped up to a white-painted door with a bronze knocker and handle. He turned to smile at them.
This is the coach house where our acolytes stay.
Arceus explained.
You will be staying in the blue room. An acolyte is already awaiting you there.
I will need more than one. I am assuming that they do not wish me to drain their acolytes to death, Damon said.
Yeah, that would be more than likely. Arceus, Damon is hungrier than that.
Julian found himself translating again as the Vampire King seemed not inclined to speak out loud any time soon. Arceus was not in the least bit flustered.
I shall have more readied. How many would be sufficient?
12, Damon answered.
Do you have 12 you can spare?
Julian asked, sensing just from the size of the house that 12 would stretch House Ravenscroft to the limit, considering these acolytes had to feed the other members of the house too, and recover. Arceus froze for just a millisecond, but then answered smoothly,
I can call in some acolytes that live off property to assist.
I will hunt tomorrow. But tonight we must remain here in seclusion if possible, Damon answered, clearly not pleased at his weakness.
Do whatever you can,
Julian said to Arceus. The confessor nodded and opened the door into the coach house. Julian's first impression was that it was a comfortable and luxurious spa retreat. There were a lot of candles and low light, dark wood and neutral wall colors. It was soothing. Arceus led them to a second-floor room to the right. Like its name, the room was done in shades of blue, from the palest blue walls to a midnight blue comforter on a bed that could have hosted an orgy. The bed was in a separate room to their left. There looked to be a full ensuite bathroom in there as well. The space before them probably would have been classified as a sitting room, as there were couches, chairs, a fireplace, and several small end tables. But it seemed far more like a high-end lounge space to Julian. The reason was that the couches and chairs were overly large and deep, allowing 2 people to lie down on them easily. A young man dressed in tan silk pants only rose from one of those chairs. He bowed low. Julian's palms were suddenly sweaty.
Jacob, these are our very special guests that I told you about.
Arceus said, with careful enunciation of every word.
King Damon is recovering his strength after a long sleep and will need to feed from more than just you tonight. So he will be your only visitor. You will need to rest afterwards.
I understand, Master Arceus.
Jacob spoke softly, still bowing. My dearest acolytes, I regret to inform you that this podcast has been edited to conform to this platform's rules and regulations. Obviously, sexy vampire interludes are not appreciated by these plebeians. This episode has been cut to be acceptable to audiences of all ages. Not to worry, if you are interested in hearing the full episode with all the steamy parts included, you can purchase a monthly membership at wraithrain.com. Not ready to commit to a monthly membership? then please visit the shop at wraithrain.com, where the full episodes are available for sale in audiobook format. The Everdark podcast by Ex Aritare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thelis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart. Edited by Matthew Prince. Continuity by Adriel Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reads Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Last on Everdark, we got to experience Julian and Damon having quite a good time feeding and being fed. Now we return to one of our ostensible foes, vampire confessor Fiona Darksilver. Everdark, Episode 22, Faith. Earlier, vampire confessor Fiona Darksilver stood in the center of the Siren Blood Den. Her silver eyes scanned the vampires who darted curious and some angry glances at her. It was never good when a confessor of her level came into a blood den. They all knew that. Vampire confessors Donato and Sloane had been called to this address because Julian Harrow had been spotted here. Yet now, everyone claimed it had been a false alarm. Even her fellow confessors were saying so. But there was a vagueness in their recollections of the evening, and the recording of who entered and exited had apparently become corrupted rather conveniently.
I smell Iros indifference,
She thought, and narrowed her eyes as she scanned those all present again. None met her gaze this time. They all sensed her anger and didn't want her to take it out on them. A confessor could sanction any vampire, which could mean imprisonment or worse. In this case, it would be the or worse. Caemorn had made it quite clear that anyone who stood against them was to be eliminated, even though these vampires appeared to truly know nothing, at least not anymore, might not matter to him. If she reported what happened here, he would require them to be executed. She didn't want that, but she had to somehow salvage the evening or Caemorn would focus on the failures here. She snapped her fingers at Donato and Sloane, indicating that they should follow her into one of the private rooms. She chose the first one on her right. When she stepped inside, there was a particular perfume she recognized.
Sophia Strange,
She said out loud, and her stomach fell. A seer was involved in this, a very powerful seer. Sophia had long been suspected of treachery, but there had never been any proof of it. She always danced out of the Order's grasp. Caemorn, though, would see her presence here as proof of guilt. But Sophia was a beloved seer and had many allies. Harming her would harm the Order, but Caemorn wouldn't see it that way. He would only see betrayal. Donato blinked almost sleepily at her, more proof of mind control and brainwashing, and said, "What, my lady?" She turned around to face him, her cloak snapping behind her like a living thing. The beads in her hair clicked.
Sophia Strange was here. She was in this room.
Sloane frowned, her forehead puckered.
You don't remember? Is that what you were going to say? Because you don't remember Julian Harrow being here, but I am certain he was.
Fiona couldn't help the sharpness in her tone. It had Sloane flinching as if she had been struck.
I'm trying my best, my lady, to give you the information you want, but I cannot lie to you and tell you what I did not experience.
She whined.
I simply do not recall her being in the blood den. We allowed no one to leave after getting the message about the Harrow boy.
And yet she was here, and not all that long ago. This evening, definitely. Yet somehow she is gone, and somehow no one remembers her.
Fiona took in a second deep breath of the air. There was another scent. Something not familiar, and yet it tantalized her nostrils. She felt she should know it. It smelled primal to her somehow. Was it the Harrow boy?
And someone was with her. But I'm betting you don't remember them either. Don't answer that, I already know what you will say.
The other confessors said nothing, but they did glance at one another. What was there to say? She was claiming they were either incompetent or brainwashed. Either was unacceptable for a confessor. Confessors were to be strong enough of mind to resist an Iros attack, but they had not.
The whole blood den is brainwashed, though,
She thought with a touch of alarm.
It would take dozens of Iros days to accomplish this, but it has been done in less than one night. And somehow I do not think a troop of Iros came in here.
That left two possibilities. The first was that the Vampire King himself had come to spirit away Sophia Strange and Julian Harrow. But even if such a being truly did exist, why would he come to get those two? And the message that had been received by the Order was that Julian had come in alone. She supposed if the Vampire King did exist, then he could make himself invisible. But why would he? And why would he bring Julian to a siren blood den, then erase everyone's memories of them being there? That simply made no sense. The other possibility was more likely, and in a way, far more worrisome.
Balthazar Ravenscroft.
She named that second possibility in her head. Even though Balthazar was young, he had managed to overthrow and kill Roan Tithe, his own master. Roan had been brilliant at mind control, especially over his fledglings, but Balthazar had ended him with extreme prejudice.
And Arceus came to his side, convinced the council to simply exile instead of execute him as the law requires.
She thought with some bitterness. It wasn't that she believed that what Roan had been doing was right. No, absolutely not. It should have been dealt with by the council or the Order long before Balthazar killed him. But Roan was a veteran of the War of the Immortals. Excuses were made for him. Lenience was offered. He had sacrificed part of his soul and mind for all of them. This had granted him centuries to abuse his fledglings while everyone turned a blind eye. She wasn't even angry that Arceus had argued vociferously on Balthazar's behalf. He'd made the point that if they had intervened when they should have, the murder would never have happened. But few wanted to take on the responsibility of failing a whole house. Interfering in a house was something that was simply never to be done if one could help it. Also, people knew that Balthazar was one of Arceus's projects, after all. One of those broken, brilliant, and beautiful young men that attracted the vampire confessor's love, devotion, and desire to bring back into the fold. So they had dismissed many of his arguments. All of Arceus's points she had understood. It was the fact that Arceus had abandoned her for Balthazar that still smarted. She had been his apprentice for well over 200 years, but he had thrown her over for a vampire he'd known only half a century, a vampire that had killed his master, a vampire that did not even believe. Yet Arceus hadn't even hesitated when the council had told him that the only way they would consider not executing Balthazar for the unforgivable sin of killing his master, even if it was to save himself and the other members of House Tithe, was if Arceus went into exile himself.
I accept. I will go into exile.
Arceus had said without a moment's thought to the council that had loomed above him on the half-moon dais. Fiona had been standing beside him, and she couldn't help her gasp. She'd turned to him, her hands clenched before her chest, and said,
But you can't. You can't leave.
He'd touched her hands gently with one of his large bear-like paws and smiled down at her beatifically.
But I must. We failed to protect them. We did not rein in the Roan when we had the chance, and now look what has happened.
But it doesn't have to be you who goes. It's not your fault. You wanted to do something, but others wouldn't.
He pressed 2 fingers to her lips to stop her from mentioning Caemorn's name, and bringing upon herself censure at best, and exile at worst. Caemorn had been the one to nix most of Arceus's arguments. He had taken pleasure in doing it too.
I am a member of the Order. I am as responsible as much as any other.
He told her, You are a member of the Order no longer, Arceus Cain. You are hereby exiled with the rest of House Tithe, Councillor Thalen said, and rapped his gavel on the wooden table.
No, that's impossible!
Fiona.
Arceus gently held her. He was still smiling. His eyes were filled with tears, but not at leaving Everdark or losing his position or anything like that. He felt her pain, but he was still going to leave her despite the fact that she was in agony because of it. She'd known even then, beyond her own pain, that the loss of Arceus was more than unjust. It would be a detriment to the Order. He was not simply a senior confessor with a brilliant heart and brilliant mind, but also a balance to those in the Order, like Caemorn, who put politics first instead of faith. Arceus was a figure whom other confessors rallied around. He was someone who could have blunted Caemorn's more authoritarian and detrimental policies over the years. For if Arceus opposed something, there would at least be a debate. He had been an incredibly powerful figure, though he himself had never seemed to grasp that. There were rumors that the Order had been considering replacing Caemorn with Arceus at some point. That was, until he was exiled. "My lady," Donato said hesitantly, noticing her lack of focus. She snapped back to the present and zeroed in on him.
What?
"What would you have us do?" he asked.
Balthazar Ravenscroft.
She said the name of the man who had stolen Arceus, not only from her, but from the Order itself, and allowed Caemorn to run wild.
I believe he is behind this. He and his house.
Sloane was frowning again. Fiona was really starting to hate that frown.
But, if I recall rightly, Balthazar has no love for the Immortals or the Order. He does not believe in anything. So why would he help the Harrow Boy or this potential rogue immortal?
Fiona repressed a sigh. Sloane did not understand Balthazar's psychology. He'd been damaged by people in authority, so he pushed back and even denied their existence. He would be one to help Daemon, not to help the Vampire King, but to simply thumb his nose at the Order and the council that had thrust him out.
But Arceus would believe. He has always believed that Daemon was out there, sleeping and waiting to return. He would urge Balthazar to take his side as well.
Her heart clenched at the thought of Arceus being on the opposite side of the Order, the opposite side of her. Even if Daemon was real, and the first among equals, the vampires would never allow him to rule them. The Immortals were rather like the Greek and Roman gods, in her opinion. Powerful, but full of vices and not fit to rule justly or wisely. The way things were now was better, but a small voice in her head whispered, "And what of Caemorn? Do you think he is just and wise? Do you think he is worthy of leadership?" "No, you do not. Arceus should be preceptor, but instead he was sent away, and now he might be on the opposite side of you in this battle."
We are going to watch House Ravenscroft.
She finally informed the two other confessors.
And once we have the proof we need, we will go in.
Not only are the Everdark actors incredibly talented at what they do, they're also fascinating people. I hope you're getting to know them as well as me in our mini Q&As every week. If you tend to skip those, go back and take a listen. Sometimes we talk about the episode you've just heard and get a little more into lore or characters. Other times it's about the craft of voice acting, vampires in general, fantasy and games, or just life. These interludes are only about 5 to 8 minutes long, and if you have thoughts of your own about what we're talking about, we want to hear them. Come to the YouTube version of the episode and leave a comment. The voice actors are also keen to know your thoughts and are watching the comments as well.
She desperately wanted to speak to Arceus first, but the moment he saw her, House Ravenscroft would hide whatever it was doing. If the house was giving King Daemon sanctuary, she would lose whatever chance she had of stopping his return. He would be weak now, just having awakened. Later, it might be too late if even a tenth of the stories about his powers were true.
Tell no one of what we are doing. The two of you are to go dark,
she informed them.
What we do now is crucial to the very heart of the vampire world.
Both bowed low.
Is the yelling over?
Sophia Strange asked as she peeked into the room. She had changed into a yellow baby doll dress with strappy sandals that somehow made her look younger to Balthazar than before. She caught sight of William and came over.
Oh, William, don't cry.
She crouched down by him and patted his back.
It's over now. Balthazar won't be angry with you forever.
You see that in the future, do you? Balthazar asked archly. She smiled up at him.
You're even feeling bad about it now, though you shouldn't.
She went back to addressing William, who looked at her with a tear-streaked face.
You were very wrong, William, to be so disrespectful to our king and his fledgling. I know you won't do it again, and will be a loyal subject, but you must understand how very wrong you were.
I won't ever do it again,
William sobbed. Balthazar did feel badly, even though William and the others had earned his shouting and, if he were a different sort of master, he would have done far more than that. But still, he hated to see his people upset. He knew he was indulgent, and that was why their seeming betrayal had hurt so much more. Even now, they all clustered around the edges of the room like shamed children. He pinched the top of his nose. He felt a hand on his back. He opened his eyes, but he already knew it was Christian touching him, comforting me. He looked into his fledgling's beautiful face. He found himself focusing on those lips especially. Christian had kissed him. He was pretty sure that it was because the young man had lost himself in the joy of feeding and wasn't truly personal. But still, it was a start, and now Christian was touching him to comfort him. That hand immediately left his back as if Christian sensed what he was thinking.
Thank you for keeping your temper,
Christian said quietly.
It would be a terrible tragedy to make Julian and my introduction to your house accompanied by another death.
You are too kind, Christian. Considering William there, though he looks like a choir boy, is old enough to be your grandfather and is not at all sweet. Would have ripped your best friend's heart out, if he could, Balthazar remarked dryly. Christian's head tipped up.
There was no chance of that happening.
We don't know that, Balthazar protested.
On the contrary, Damon entered your room as a pack of wolves.
Christian replied.
I'm pretty sure he could take on one vampire all by himself. I'm pretty sure he can take on all of us at the same time.
He appeared in your quarters as a pack of wolves, my lord?
Isabel asked, her right hand fluttering by her string of pearls.
He did.
Christian assured her. Oh, yes, it was quite dramatic. He likes to be dramatic. I mean, he levitated William. Balthazar bit down on the laugh he wanted to let out. That was impressive and funny at the same time, or would have been if it had not been caused by William's absolute foolishness. I should have called a house meeting. I should have explained everything, but I didn't. I let rumors swirl and didn't let them voice their fears. This is somewhat my fault, he realized. I was the foolish one, but I was so put off my game by having Christian and Julian finally here that I didn't think.
Bloodline wherein?
Isabel whispered, and she twisted her strand of beads so hard that it snapped, and the pearls scattered everywhere. Oh, damn, Balthazar muttered, and went to lean down to collect some of them. But Isabel grasped the front of his shirt, and her eyes were frantic.
He really is our king, isn't he? The first among equals, and we attacked him.
Balthazar wanted to say that if she wanted someone to confirm that Damon was the vampire king, she should seek out Arceus. He didn't believe it, except that wasn't quite true any longer. He'd seen some of what Damon could do, and though the man was really weak right now, his powers were incredible. Further, he had all the powers that the vampire king was supposed to have. They hadn't seen Armageddon yet, but no vampire he knew could perform 2 of the Bloodline's powers, let alone the half-dozen he'd already displayed. Further, he came from Nightvallen. Also, Julian bore his mark, and perhaps more importantly, the Order was trying to hush it all up. His eyes met Christian's. He knew that this very scientifically minded fledgling of his had already accepted that Damon was king based upon facts. So why was he so resistant to it? He found himself saying, "Yes, he is." But he didn't seem to mind that our people attacked him. He actually praised me, and all of you. Didn't you notice? She blinked at him. He frowned. He sounded like a little boy who'd been given a pat on the head. He didn't need anyone's approval, let alone this supposed king. He would only call a person king, or majesty, or master, if they had earned his respect. Damon had yet to do that. He'd acted magnanimously with William, to be sure, but that was hardly enough to win over Balthazar. Just because he might be the Damon of legend doesn't really mean anything, Isabel. We threw off the yoke of the other immortals when they used us as cannon fodder. If he thinks he can just come in and rule us all, he's got another thing coming, he told her. Isabel, though, was looking off into the distance, eyes filled with a mixture of shock and awe. Her hands loosed on his shirt front, and she drifted over to William's side. Sophia was still trying to coax him up, but William wanted to remain kneeling until Balthazar allowed him to rise. Another stab of guilt went through Balthazar. He glanced over at Christian. His fledgling was regarding William out of sympathetic eyes. That was enough to move him. "Enough of this," Balthazar muttered. He leaned down and picked up William into his arms. The vampire weighed practically nothing and looked up at him out of huge eyes in a tear-stained face. "You really are adorable. Dangerously so, William. I am still very angry with you. You know that, don't you?"
"Yes, my lord."
He sniffled and lowered his head. Fat tears slid down his face and landed on Balthazar's shirt.
"Oh, no."
He tried desperately to blot them, knowing how particular Balthazar was about his clothing.
"I am so sorry."
"Enough with the apologies." "I know you are," Balthazar said. "Christian, we are going to take William to his room. Then we are going to finish what we started in the coach house." Christian nodded. He then addressed the room. "The rest of you, go back to your evening. I'm sure there will be a lot of gossiping, but save your questions until tomorrow. We will be having a house meeting where I will try to answer them all. But know this," his voice grew very stern. "Damon and Julian are our guests. I want there to be no misunderstandings about that. I do not care what other feelings you might have about them. They are to be treated with respect." There were nods all around, and the vampires drifted away in groups. They were already chattering softly amongst themselves. He was sure that the house hadn't had this kind of excitement in years. Before Isabel left, she looked back at him, and he couldn't completely read her expression at first. She had been very devout back when Roan had ruled their house. Her faith had waned after they had been exiled, though she still prayed with Arceus weekly. He'd assumed her faith to be something to hang on to when Roan was vile. Now he saw a fervorous light in her eyes again. He wondered what those that did believe in the old tales about Damon being their savior would think about the fact that he was their guest. The exiled house hosted the vampire king. Maybe Arceus was right, that this truly could be their ticket back into the vampire world. Sophia spoke up.
Before you go, there's something you need to know, Balthazar.
"What is it? Do you need another piece of furniture? I don't mind the COD thing. Quite convenient, really." He teased her. As he said this, William rested his head tentatively on Balthazar's shoulder. William always loved to be cuddled. It was something that Roan had enjoyed withholding from him. He let William snuggle down. He worried for a moment that Christian might be jealous, but one glance at his Spock-like fledgling and the thought fled. Christian was not worried about his place with him. Balthazar nearly shone with joy at that.
Oh, good. But no more things are arriving tonight. At the end of the week, though, I am expecting some exquisite linen.
She informed him, practically swooning at the thought of sheets.
You're so generous with me, Lord Balthazar.
He grunted. "Of course. I'm expecting to hear about that greatness you promised me in return at some point." She giggled.
You're so funny. But really, one of my predictions has already come through, so you mustn't be greedy.
What prediction?
Christian asked. Balthazar winced. He knew which one it was. She had said that Damon was going to be the exact person he was looking for, and in that one instant when Damon had praised him, he had felt something. And Damon sparing William after dealing with the mutiny so well had also been rather a relief. It was as if he had someone he could turn to, even steadier than Arceus. Damon had that quality of command, but he shook himself. He was reading too much into this. That needy part inside of him that still wanted a master on some level, since Roan had been such a monster and not up to the task, had latched onto a commanding voice and demeanor. That was all. It didn't mean anything about whether Damon was worthy or that he needed him. Sophia just smiled enigmatically, not answering Christian before saying,
And one other thing.
"What?" he asked with a sense of dread. She'd already told him about the linen. He supposed dresses or something were next, but that wasn't what she had to tell him.
I'm afraid you'll have to go out to eat this evening. Damon will have drained all the acolytes.
All of them, he asked faintly.
Well over a dozen.
She qualified.
So, you see, there simply won't be enough to go around. And since you're the type of vampire lord that feeds himself last...
He groaned and tipped his head back.
I won't feed, my lord.
William offered.
I know you have to feed for two.
William, you look like you need to recover at home. And besides, going out would be good.
Christian put in.
Balthazar, you can show me how to hunt and use mind control. I wish to start my education as soon as possible.
But, Balthazar pathetically bleated. We need to be alone and...
We will be alone. Well, us and a city full of people.
Christian said with a shrug.
Besides, there's nothing that really interests me in the coach house.
Other than the kissing and touching and beds. Nothing there of interest at all. But he already knew that Christian wasn't going to sleep with him that night. He was also pretty sure there would be no repeat of the kissing or touching, so maybe it was best if they were out and about. Christian loved to learn. He loved to teach. That could be the start of a relationship between them. Balthazar grinned. All right, I will take you out hunting then. Join us next time for episode 23, Kinds.
Many people have asked us if there are ebooks of the Everdark series. Yes, now there are ebooks, as well as Everdark merch. The ebooks are available in PDF, EPUB, and Mobi from our own merch shop. Just follow the link in the notes to the Everdark series to read on your phone or any device. And check out the t-shirts, mugs, art prints, and pop sockets while you're at it. Your support really matters to us as small creators, and any purchases go directly to supporting the creation of more stories, just like Everdark and Dragon's Reign. Thanks, you guys.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing. Last time on Everdark, vampire confessor Fiona Darksilver starts to make her move, and Balthazar starts to wonder if his houseguest is really the great vampire king. Oh, and if he is, how can Balthazar use that to his advantage? Everdark, Episode 23, Kinds. Hunting. That word was not something that Christian usually associated with obtaining a meal. One went to the grocery store, or out to a restaurant, or even just to the refrigerator. But hunting? To hunt? To have to go out and actually hunt down food? Not to mention that the food would be as smart as you were, and for it to be quite illegal to eat. In fact, to be found out was to threaten all vampire kind.
Nothing to be nervous about.
Christian thought dryly. His face reflected back at him in the mirror, though it showed he was nervous. His lips were pressed tightly together, his jaw clenched and unclenched. His fangs, though, were not coming out. It was as if eating was the last thing he wanted to do.
Because we're going to be eating from people, but not killing them. And Balthazar will be the one feeding from them, and me from him.
He smoothed his hands down the front of his shirt and took in a breath to steady himself. His reflection looked slightly more at ease. As he usually did when he was anxious about something, he listed out all the reasons that things would be fine.
Balthazar knows what he's doing. He may be slightly ridiculous when it comes to certain things, a little reactive, very emotional, but he was able to stop that entire room of vampires with the force of his mind. Humans should be even easier to control, so I'm safe with them.
Yet this wouldn't be an easy encounter with an acolyte who wished to be with them, who wanted it. These people would not be willing. They might even be afraid. When they realized that Balthazar was a vampire, what would they do? Would they simply already be in a trance? He was certain that Julian was already deep into the business of feeding from Damon. His best friend was always eager to try new things. Julian would leap before he looked all the time. There would be the crash later when he came down from eating strange food, drinking unclean water, rappelling off that ledge. But while Julian was in the moment, he would be golden. Christian was not that way. He studied everything from every angle and, truthfully, was not a big fan of change.
And becoming a vampire is the biggest change of all.
Christian, everything okay? Balthazar asked from his bedroom. Christian had left the vampire lord fussing around with the bed since it was now clear that Damon and Julian would not be using his bedroom again. Christian saw his actions rather like a cat, inspecting where it normally slept after another cat had sat there.
I'm fine.
Christian said with a final look at himself in the mirror.
Ready to go.
Christian stepped out of the bathroom and saw that the bed had been completely stripped and remade for the second time that night. Christian's eyebrows rose.
Didn't you already change the linen after Julian threw up? Are you changing it again because Damon laid there for like 1 hour?
Christian asked. Both of them looked over the perfectly made bed that was heaped with mounds of pillows, a dark purple comforter, and a fur blanket lying across the bottom of the bed. Well, I was having your room prepared with fresh linen, so I thought I would do my own at the same time. Balthazar shrugged.
My room?
Christian couldn't keep the shock out of his voice. He couldn't have heard this right. Wasn't this his room? Or rather the room he shared with Balthazar. He had been wondering what the sleeping arrangements were going to be. He had been planning on erecting a pillow barrier between them at the very least. Yet here Balthazar was offering him a room of his own. Yes. Would you like to see it before we leave? Can't take too long, as the night is getting away from us, Balthazar told him casually.
Too casually. He knows this is a big deal. Well, I thought...
Christian stopped. He wasn't sure how to phrase this, but then decided direct was best.
I thought you intended for me to have to sleep in here with you.
Balthazar cleared his throat and shuffled a little bit, which was incongruent to his elegant attire and demeanor. I did, but then I realized that's not what you wanted. Besides, everyone needs their own space.
Where is it? My room, that is.
Christian wasn't sure he believed that this room existed. 2 doors down. Balthazar tipped his head in the direction of Christian's room.
Not right next door? No adjoining chambers or anything like that?
Christian fully expected there to be some way other than the hallway door for Balthazar to get to him. But the vampire lord shook his head. Like I said, everyone needs their own space. Shall we go see it? He offered again. Christian, though, had not moved. He felt like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. There had to be some catch. This was Balthazar, after all. The vampire lord sighed and rubbed his forehead. I can see what you're thinking, Christian, even though I can't quite read your mind, Balthazar said. And you think that there's some funny business going on here?
Quite frankly, yes.
Christian crossed his arms over his chest.
You've made it quite clear about what you think a relationship between a master and fledgling must be, and it involves a lot of touching, and definitely sleeping in the same room.
Balthazar flashed one of those grins that Christian was finding less annoying and almost endearing. You are right and wrong.
Explain, please.
That I want there to be touching and being together. Balthazar gestured to the bed. But not that there must be. I want you to want me. It's as simple as that. And I can't make you do that. Christian's arms unfolded and hung down by his sides.
After everything I've seen you do, I'm pretty sure you could make me.
I would never make you, Balthazar said, and all of his usual amusement was completely gone.
No, of course you wouldn't. Not after what Roan did to all of you.
Christian suddenly felt cold and rubbed his arms. Balthazar obviously didn't want either of them to think about Roan too long, so he waggled his eyebrows as he said, I notice that you're also saying that I'm impressive and powerful and...
I think you're fully aware of your own power,
Christian replied dryly. But to hear it from one's own fledgling is, how shall I say, wonderful, especially if that fledgling is you. Balthazar answered, because you don't exaggerate things.
Well, I think I've stroked your ego enough tonight, especially after that kiss. I don't know why I did that. Likely the intimacy of the moment, but that should have had me withdrawing, not moving towards him like that.
Then let's see your room, and we shall be off. Christian followed Balthazar out of the bedroom and 2 doors down the hall. The vampire lord pushed open the door with his fingertips and stepped back so that Christian could walk in first. He moved inside, not sure what he expected. The room was modern, with clean lines, maple flooring and furniture with cool grey-blue walls. There was a king-sized bed with neutral bedding. It looked cool and crisp. There was a desk with a sleek Mac laptop. There was a walk-in closet that smelled pleasantly of cedar. Finally, there was an ensuite bathroom in icy white with dual pedestal sinks and a floor-to-ceiling glass-enclosed shower with multiple shower heads. Christian padded out of the bathroom to where Balthazar was standing, waiting for him. While this was different from his room at Wingate was more traditional with honey woods and country accents, but this room felt like him. It would make being here away from his true home easier. Well, how do you like it? You can, of course, change whatever you like. As Sophia has demonstrated, we have a substantial decorating budget, Balthazar said, rocking back and forth on his heels.
It's fine as is. I think I'll let Sophia have my decorating budget,
Christian said, and he almost felt shy about it.
Thank you for this, Balthazar.
Of course. I want you to feel this is your home, Christian, Balthazar said with a faint smile.
I know you want that,
Christian said. He didn't say that he wanted that too. All of this was too confusing. He was out of his usual spot and still wanted his life to go back to what it was, but that wasn't going to happen. His logical brain told him that he had to figure out how to go forward and not mourn for what was lost. Come, Christian, we only have a few hours before we must return. Balthazar extended a hand to him, gesturing Christian to precede him out of the room.
Guys, I just want to give you a heads up that this has been edited. The complete episode is in both the audiobook version, which you can purchase from the Wraith Range shop, and it's in the private member podcast feed, which has the chapters uploaded to stream right from a page on the membership site. So if you sign up to be a Wraith Rain member, you can stream this chapter and a heck of a lot more, and it's all unedited. Or if you purchase the audiobook, you get the full audiobook, nothing edited. Because we have our own platform at wraithrain.com, we don't depend on YouTube or Spotify like so many other content creators do. So we can create and publish the full chapters with all that sexiness, complete with romantic scenes on our own site.
Balthazar took them to the garage again, like he had when they went to rescue Julian from the Siren Blood Den. But this time, instead of getting into one of the SUVs, the vampire lord took them to a jet-black Mercedes convertible. Even though the air was chilly, Balthazar put down the top. You'll find that you don't feel the cold like you used to, Balthazar explained, before he pulled the sedan out in a fluid, confident movement. They were soon off the manor's grounds and onto the curving, darkened streets of the town. Balthazar did not head into the downtown where the blood den was, but instead got onto the highway that led to the nearest large city, about 20 minutes away. The cold breeze was like a caress against Christian's skin. He leaned his head back against the headrest and closed his eyes as the luxury car raced over the asphalt like it was a spool of unending silk. He only opened them when Balthazar asked him a question.
What did you say?
Christian asked. His mind had been obsessed with the whistle of the wind, and he hadn't heard the question. Balthazar gave him a wicked smile. I asked, "What kind of prey did you want to hunt tonight?"
What kind?
Christian frowned. That had Balthazar chuckling. He shifted gears and effortlessly moved around 2 semis and several speeding sedans. His movements were incredibly precise. Christian realized that vampire reflexes were at least twice as fast as human ones, probably more than that. Balthazar hardly seemed to pay attention to the vehicles around them as he effortlessly weaved around them and left them in his dust. But there was never a sense that he didn't know the obstacles that were around them. Balthazar was perfectly aware of their surroundings at all times.
The ultimate predator.
I'm not suggesting different species. Obviously, humans are the best. Other animals will drive us crazy. So, the issue is what kind of human we go after, Balthazar explained.
What kind of humans are there?
Christian frowned, his forehead puckering. Oh, Christian, with such a scientific mind, you are being very unimaginative. Is that because you're worried about choosing anyone at all? Balthazar fully turned his head towards Christian. The urge to tell him to look at the road was high, especially when a car darted in front of them, but without looking forward at all. Balthazar neatly avoided that maneuver and managed to snake through all of the traffic and into an empty span of road with no one but them. Christian let out a breath that he turned into a sigh as if put upon.
You tell me what you mean about different kinds. I don't lump humans together like you do.
Yet, you'll start to see humanity differently after a time. You'll have to. Otherwise, it will cause you too much distress. The last was said softly.
We're not going to kill anyone, right?
Christian asked sharply. He thought he already knew the answer, but he wanted to be sure. Of course not. Balthazar reached to touch his shoulder, but instead lowered his hand quickly before he touched Christian. Christian actually ached when Balthazar didn't touch him. He didn't dismiss this reaction immediately. He studied it. He realized, with a little start of discomfort as Balthazar was still an unknown quantity, that he was beginning to depend on the vampire lord to make him feel comfortable in this brand new world. I'm really dividing humanity into those we might find attractive, and that doesn't just mean physical attraction, and those, well, the bad ones, the villains, the ones that intend to do harm, Balthazar explained. Christian thought about this. What Balthazar was asking him was whether he wanted to go after people that attracted him in some way or to stop those that were hurting others. He immediately had an answer.
The bad ones,
Christian said.
If we're going to hunt people, let's at least pair it with doing something good.
Balthazar merely nodded. He didn't question Christian's choice. In fact, Christian was pretty sure that Balthazar understood exactly why he wanted to go after those causing harm.
Well, how will we find the wrongdoers, though?
Christian asked as they silkily threaded their way through traffic and aimed for an exit that would take them through a very bad part of the nearby city. I can smell violence, Balthazar explained. His lips pursed as though that did not fully explain what he experienced. The Eiros power of mind control is often seen as imposing one's will upon another, but that's not accurate. We see inside their minds and know exactly how to influence them.
So you read their minds?
Christian qualified. He gave a brief nod. It's more and less than that. For example, I know that in that apartment building on the 4th floor, a man is about to rape a woman. Brutally. He intends to use a hammer. Christian jerked back in his seat, then said,
Let's stop that.
All right. Again, there was no hesitation as Balthazar exited the highway and glided silently through the worn streets where the concrete was broken, the buildings were sad, and the people were afraid. Balthazar turned their headlights off as soon as they left the highway. Christian immediately realized that he had no trouble seeing in the dark. In a way, the headlights had been a distraction. The vampire lord turned into an alleyway where the fire escapes surrounded them on both sides like an Escher painting. The purr of the engine was cut off as Balthazar pressed the engine button. Silence fell, except it wasn't really silent. If Christian had still been human, the alleyway would have seemed quiet, but to his vampiric senses it was anything but. There was a man on the first floor with sleep apnea. Christian could hear the labored breathing followed by the ominous pause, and then a gasp as the man drank air down greedily. There was a woman on the second floor who had bad gas that night. She would fart and then let out a sigh of relief. There was a child on the third floor that was having bad dreams and letting out little whimpers as if she were being chased. And then there were the couple on the fourth floor. Even as a human, he would have heard the sharp words between them. Hers were shrill with anger and fear. His were barks of rage that were barely contained. The hair on the back of Christian's neck stood on end. Violence was definitely in the air. Balthazar got out of the car in one liquid movement. He didn't bother with putting the top up or even slipping the key fob that allowed the car to be turned on into his pocket. He simply left the key there and the car open. Christian was betting that no one stole from a vampire and got away with it for very long. Besides, the night was long and deep. There was no one around in this stinking alleyway in this bad part of the city. They were the top predators in any event. Christian joined him.
How do we get up?
Christian doubted that they were heading in the front door. He was right. Balthazar crouched down and then lightly leaped up onto the first floor's fire escape. The metal did not even rattle when the vampire lord landed. Balthazar was about to release the ladder for him, but Christian made a movement to indicate he shouldn't. Christian was going to try to leap just as Balthazar had. The vampire lord grinned and stepped back from the railing so that Christian had plenty of room to land. Christian felt rather like a cat as he crouched down and waggled his butt, winding up for the leap. And he did leap. He went up into the air but soared past the first stairwell, but not quite to the second. He started to fall back down. His hands scrabbled at the air. Balthazar caught him around the wrists and effortlessly hauled him up onto the fire escape. Christian's heart was pounding and he clutched at the vampire lord for long moments. Balthazar gently stroked his back, but was careful not to go lower. Christian had closed his eyes at some point and realized he was trembling. "You did well," Balthazar assured him.
I need to test my abilities in a controlled setting,
Christian said, trying to keep any shaking out of his voice. "I am here, Christian. I wouldn't let you do anything dangerous that I couldn't save you from. Now, let's go up. Quiet as mice," Balthazar said. The vampire lord had let him go. His trembling had eased, and yet Christian felt so bereft. Yet he knew that he was safe. Though this situation would have been dangerous to others, he knew that with Balthazar that it was controlled. He wasn't going to let his guard down, but he realized that he didn't need to be terrified either. Christian was reminded of his and Julian's childhoods, where they would go play Bloody Mary or Ghosts in the graveyard, where they and their friends would be scared of the dark, but knew in the back of their heads that they were truly safe in the upper middle-class neighborhood. It was the same now. They were doing what seemed like a dangerous thing, what likely was a dangerous thing for others, but not for them. Balthazar was completely in control. They ghosted up the black, painted metal stairs. The metal didn't even rattle beneath their feet. Christian realized that he could consciously adjust the weight of his footsteps to make them utterly silent. It was fascinating. All too soon they were crouched outside of the fourth-story apartment where the couple was arguing. The woman's voice was soft and pleading. She was crying. Christian could hear the pain in her voice. The boyfriend had likely struck her and was edging to get inside and end this. But Balthazar held a hand on his shoulder and kept them crouching down just beneath the lip of the still. Christian glanced over the top of it and was nearly blinded by two lamps on the side tables, though they were low wattage. He blinked and his eyes teared. In that brief moment, before being nearly blinded, he had seen a man, white, about 6 foot, with tattoos all down his arms of skulls and vines, in a white t-shirt and faded jeans, gripping the shoulders of a dark-haired young woman with golden-toned skin and green eyes. She wore jeans and a yellow top. Her makeup was streaked from tears, and she was trying to twist out of the man's hands.
I didn't!
She wailed.
I just went to work. Jason is my boss. I have to talk to him.
The man shook her violently as if she was some kind of rag doll. Her head snapped back and forth with a painful clicking sound. The apartment smelled of old blood, rancid food, and despair. Christian knew that no one here was happy. The sense of being trapped was in every grey, dirty angle of the apartment. He couldn't stand it.
I know you were flirting with him. I know what you are. You whore.
He snarled. Christian's jaw tightened. He wanted to leap up and grab this arsehole by the throat and shake him until he knew what pain she felt. Before he knew it, he actually had leaped into the apartment. Balthazar hadn't stopped him. The boyfriend caught sight of him and shouted,
"Who the fuck are you?"
At first, Christian looked back at Balthazar, who was leisurely coming in through the window. The vampire lord was letting him take the lead. Christian whipped around towards the couple as he heard the boyfriend throw the girl into the wall and advance upon him. She bounced off the plaster painfully and rubbed the back of her head with a dazed expression on her face. The boyfriend's lips were peeled back from his teeth in a snarl, and his hands were raised up to punch Christian. Now, Christian, your reflexes are quite a bit better than his. Let him come at you so you can see what I mean practically, Balthazar said matter-of-factly. Christian turned back to the boyfriend just as the bastard was throwing his first punch. Time seemed to slow to a crawl, while Christian's movements appeared at normal speed. He effortlessly stepped outside of the puncher's range. Another punch came, and another. Again, simply stepping right or left kept him well out of range of getting hit.
"What the hell?"
the boyfriend shouted. The faintest trace of fear was entering his voice. Christian knew that his movements were inexplicably fast. Now, Christian, can you feel his mind? It's a coarse, pathetic thing. Hardly used, but it's there. He's all spittle and malt liquor. Can you capture it? Balthazar asked. Christian concentrated on feeling the boyfriend's mind. It wasn't hard. It was like a red haze in the air. Red equaled violence and stupidity all at once. Christian reached for it mentally and grasped it. It was squishy, and the boyfriend drew in a sharp breath before going almost limp. Don't squeeze, Balthazar warned. You'll turn him into a vegetable. Just hold him as if you were gripping a thin piece of crystal stemware. He's hardly as expensive or as interesting, but he's delicate. Christian frowned and lessened his mental grip. The boyfriend blinked and looked perplexed at Christian and Balthazar being in the apartment, but he wasn't violent, just mildly annoyed. The girlfriend, on the other hand, was focusing on them with huge eyes. She was terrified. She opened her mouth to scream, but Balthazar put a finger to his lips, and her mouth went lax. No scream issued. Now he is truly yours to do whatever you want with, Christian. His mind is completely pliable. Whatever you want him to know or not know.
If we just drink from him and don't kill him, will he hurt her again another day?
Christian asked. Balthazar was silent for a moment. Christian didn't know if he was truly looking into the mind of the boyfriend or just relying upon his understanding of human nature. But finally Balthazar said, "He will. He'll just kill her another day. Unless, of course, we alter their minds."
Alter them in what way?
We give her the agency to leave him. We give him the belief that if he comes around her, something bad will happen to him. Balthazar shrugged. Christian considered this.
I want to alter them. I want you to alter their minds.
Don't you want to try?
I don't think I want to scramble somebody's mind. Even this asshole's.
Christian said. All right.
But just all right?
Christian asked. I understand what you want. 'Tis an easy fix. Balthazar shrugged again. Christian felt an upwelling of outrage, but then he stopped himself as a revelation came to him.
You don't go after evildoers often, do you?
Balthazar shook his head. You come to find that there are endless amounts of them. The same dirty story played out again and again, with victims needing the strength to leave and villains acting out of a rage they don't understand. Often it is because they were hurt when they were still very young. Other times, they are just poison from the beginning.
So you see it as pointless? To help one when there are so many others in the exact same spot?
Christian felt a wave of despair. Were humans also predictable? And worse, the same? Would he develop a laissez-faire attitude towards them too? This time, Balthazar cupped his cheek. I will help them if you wish me to. Perhaps it will have a good effect, a ripple effect on others they will touch.
I want you to help them,
Christian said. The two humans stood like empty dolls before them, unmoving, unseeing. Balthazar crossed to them. He went to the boyfriend first. He was none too gentle when he tipped the man's head to the side and bit into his flesh. The rich, coppery scent of blood flooded the room. Christian found himself leaning forward and his eyelids fluttering halfway shut, as if he were a starving man that had smelled roasting meat. The boyfriend let out a sigh as Balthazar finished with him and let him sink to the ground. Before Balthazar went to the girl, he leaned down and murmured something into the boyfriend's ear. The boyfriend's eyes widened but then went dull again. He nodded. Christian knew he would not bother the girl again. Christian barely registered when Balthazar went to the girl. He spoke to her first, much longer than to the boyfriend. Her gaze seemed empty for a long time, but then she gave one brief nod. Then he drank from her, too. Balthazar then arranged the two of them. The girl he put in the bedroom and placed the thin coverlet over her. The boyfriend he put on the couch. The way he angled him, Christian was sure that it would be clear to him that he was to leave the girl without even speaking a word to her. Christian's stomach felt like an empty sack, but he didn't want to feed in this desperate, terrible apartment that reeked of mold and bad memories. The vampire lord obviously felt the same way, as he didn't try to embrace Christian to exchange blood. He and Balthazar stole out of the apartment the same way they had come. They slipped into the Mercedes convertible and raced out of town. Christian found he couldn't breathe until they were on the highway and far from that apartment. The ride back to the manor took far less time, or so it seemed to Christian, and he was so glad. Tension bled from his shoulders the moment they pulled into the garage. The engine ticked once it was turned off. Balthazar, not speaking, took his hand and the two of them went into the garden. They sat down on a smooth wooden bench, which faced a wide swath of the sky. Though there was no sign of the sun, Christian knew it was coming. He turned towards Balthazar.
Thank you,
he whispered.
I know it's a drop in the bucket. I know it probably doesn't mean anything, but
it means something to you, and that's all that matters. Balthazar stared at the sky, not looking at him. Christian found himself leaning his head on Balthazar's shoulder.
We're each individuals. We each matter.
Of course, Balthazar said, though Christian wasn't sure he truly agreed. The wind whistled through the trees and the scent of flowers flowed over them. Are you hungry?
Starving,
Christian admitted. All right, let's feed you. The next section of the podcast has been edited out to keep it suitable for a general audience. To get the full version, either subscribe to Wraith Rain as a member or buy the audiobook from the Wraith Rain shop. The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.
Hi there, it's Wraith, and I just wanted to say thank you. So many people have signed up for memberships to wraithrain.com because they want to support the podcast, and of course to get access to the unedited, sexy chapters. If you are thinking about becoming a member, I want to make sure that if you join, you explore everything my site has to offer. It's not just the podcast. I know it's cliche to say it, but the audio chapters really are just the tip of the iceberg. I'll tell you more about everything else you get on the serial site at the break. For now, Let's get on with the chapter.
Last time on Everdark, Balthazar took Christian on his first hunt. Everdark, Episode 24, The Hearer of Prayers. Damon slid out from underneath Julian. His fledgling made a sleepy objection that had the vampire king petting the young man's hair and tucking him more fully underneath the soft down comforter. The coolness of the room, after the warmth of Julian and the luxurious mattress, had him shifting uncomfortably. He longed to stay curled around his fledgling until Julian woke. The next section of the podcast has been abridged. Perhaps then it was best that he needed to commune with the earth, with his skin touching soil and plants and grass. He needed to reconnect to this world after he'd been gone so long. It would remember him. Planets had memories that put immortals to shame. This communion would aid him in recovering his powers more quickly. If Julian had been awake, Damon suspected he would want to be utterly present with his fledgling and would neglect this necessary act. So it was definitely best that he let Julian sleep. Newly made fledglings needed far more sleep than older vampires, let alone an immortal such as himself. Even before the sun dipped below the horizon, he had been fully awake. Despite his need to commune, he sat beside Julian, though, for a long while, one hand resting in the young man's soft hair. His mind was quiet. He was content. In this moment, finally having the one that was meant to be his all along, he knew a measure of peace he had never known before. He had no thoughts outside this moment. That would change, of course. He would want to know what happened to the other immortals. He would want his full strength returned. He would be restive not having established himself among his people. But for now, the ache that had plagued him for innumerable years was finally satisfied. Julian, I hope you dream of good things. I hope you are at least half as content as I am. He leaned down and kissed Julian's temple. Another sleepy sigh was his reward, and he couldn't help the grin that crossed his lips. Julian was so very young and full of questions and excitement. He was impressed with how readily Julian had engaged in their blood-sharing the night before. He thought he would have to coax Julian to take even a sip. Even now, there was a stain on his fledgling's skin around his mouth and down his chin to show how very eagerly he had drunk. He recalled all too well Asha's first fledgling. She had refused to drink and nearly perished as the thought of consuming the life force of humans appalled her. She had felt it was cannibalism. No matter the pleasure it brought her, she had refused sustenance. She only succumbed when she reverted to a full predator and could not stop herself. She ravaged a whole village. It was a lesson about the thirst. One must always listen to it or fall into madness. Julian clearly thought of feeding as something to be enjoyed, if not reveled in, while Damon would have to warn him of it. He doubted that Julian would ever experience it. This was good. Julian needed to be strong. He already wanted to be independent. Damon would give him some room to move, but he was the master and the king. He would protect and guide the young one on his proper course. The next section of the podcast has been abridged. It was time he communed. He did not dress, as his bare flesh needed to be in contact with the earth for the powering up process to work. Besides, his clothing had not yet been cleaned. He would have to see about getting more to wear from Balthazar. He was curious about these modern clothes. Not that they ever could compare to his own in Nightvarlen, but still, with a fledgling of this time, he would need to learn its ways as well. Yet he had no sense of shame or conspicuousness about his body. So, without hesitation, he pattered out of their suite and into the hallway of the coach house, completely nude. He was striding down the stairs when he met Arceus coming upstairs. Arceus jerked to a halt in mid-step. His gaze was riveted upon Damon's groin. His eyes swung down to Damon's feet, then quickly up to his head. Arceus tried to bow, but being on the stairs made this impossible. Damon waved him off. It was unnecessary for such formality.
My king, I was just coming to see if you require anything.
Arceus stammered out. His gaze now was very firmly upon the ground, which Damon found strange. Did he think he must avert his eyes? Some of his subjects did that, but Arceus already felt much closer than them. A guide in this brave new world, even if he had touched Julian without permission.
Perhaps you were wondering about clothing. We have a tailor scheduled to come later this evening. Also, we are having some ready-to-wear items in various sizes and styles being delivered.
Is my nudity distressing to you in some way? Damon asked. Speaking out loud was tiresome, but to connect minds was actually tiring, and he needed to conserve his strength.
No, of course not. You are perfectly formed,
Arceus hastened to say. Yes, Damon agreed. Arceus let out a strangled laugh and ran a hand across his forehead.
You sound so like Balthazar when you say that.
Damon snorted. I am sure he pretends to think well of himself no matter what the truth of the matter is. I am merely stating a fact. This body is meant to be pleasing to your kind. Arceus's head jerked up. His mouth opened, but no words came out at first, even though it was clear that a million questions raced through his mind. Damon was beginning to suspect that these vampires had no understanding of the immortals. He was just as clueless as to how matters stood. Walk with me. I must commune in the garden. We may speak between here and there, Damon suggested. The vampire king crossed his hands behind his back at the wrists and proceeded past the goggling vampire. Arceus quickly hurried after him. Damon had the distinct impression the man still wanted to cover him up, but was resisting mightily. Arceus was wearing a floor-length black robe with heavy gold jewelry. Yet despite the ornateness, there was a sense of modesty about the garment. He wondered if Arceus would rip it off his own body and offer it to him if Damon asked. Unlike the others, especially Balthazar, Arceus had accepted him as king already and would do almost anything he asked. Because of this, he must be careful.
You said that your body was meant to be pleasing to us. Does that mean that you have a different body originally? We know nothing of your kind, really, only that you came to Earth, and not even exactly when, and chose the strongest among the humans to...
What we were, we are no longer, Damon answered swiftly. We adapted, our souls swimming through the dark until we found new hosts when our old hosts were incapacitated beyond repair.
Hosts? Traveling? I have so many questions.
Arceus cried, but then bit his lower lip.
But I can see that you are not inclined to answer them.
Not all of them, and not now. Damon gave him a small smile. That seemed to placate the man. Arceus drew his hands down the front of his robe and then hid them in his sleeves. This stance seemed to calm him further.
I am sure you're not surprised by my interest, but there is a greater need for correct information than simply to satisfy my own curiosity.
Arceus explained.
You see, I don't even know where to begin. We have many myths about you and the other progenitors of the bloodlines. Damaging ones.
Everdark started as a written story published on the website wraithrain.com. And that's what Wraithrain is mostly about, my writing. Like Everdark, all my stories are gay, romantic action and adventure set in imaginary worlds, or alternate versions of our world that include shifters, elves, vampires, and magic. I write these stories serially, which means one chapter at a time, like fan fiction or web novels, and publish each chapter as soon as it's done. I always have 3 or 4 stories I'm updating at the same time. One of these currently is Everdark Academy, which is the sequel to Everdark. What happens to a serial story when it's done? It's left on the site, along with all the member comments. I've been doing this since 2010, so I have a ton of completed gay romantic stories to binge read. One of these completed stories, of course, is Everdark, so if you absolutely can't wait to find out about what happens, You can read all 147 chapters of it, and then go on to Everdark Academy.
They had just reached the foyer of the coach house. 2 vampires were standing there. It was the little fighter from the night before, William, and the one who listed his powers off in an awe-filled voice, Isabel. They had been speaking quietly, with her fussing over him. William still looked pale and distraught, likely not having fed last night because of being too upset, but also because Damon had required so much from their acolytes. He frowned at this. He was not pleased that he had taken so much from this house that was obviously struggling on its own, but there had been no other choice. He would start hunting tonight. Julian would surely enjoy it. When the 2 of them caught sight of him, their mouths dropped open. He was truly surprised that nudity had such an effect on these modern-day vampires. Or perhaps it was just his nudity that was doing this. He was uncertain. He would have to figure this out, as he adored letting the night air caress his skin. Isabel immediately dropped to her knees once she regained her composure. She tugged at William to kneel too, but he resisted her.
We're to treat him as a guest, not a god, Isabel.
William hissed in annoyance, though he did give Damon a worried look.
We've already gotten into enough trouble with Balthazar.
She reminded him.
Kneel.
William was about to, but Damon held up a hand, shaking his head. I do not require anyone to kneel to me, especially those who do not believe in me, he said quietly. William's silver eyes darted up to his face in surprise.
It's not that I don't believe in you. I mean, you're right here.
He paused, then said,
You have all the powers the stories say you're supposed to as well. I just...
Say nothing more, William.
Isabel cried frantically. I wish to hear what he has to say. It will not offend me, Damon assured her.
Of course, my king.
Isabel still looked miserable, though.
Be very careful with your words, William.
Arceus urged the child vampire. He wasn't sure this was any better of an idea than Isabel did. William stood very tall, which still did not even have the top of his head reaching Damon's shoulder, and said,
The Immortals used us to fight their battles without regard for our welfare. After we overthrew them, some of the ones that had fought in those battles were so damaged that they continued the abuses with their own fledglings. My old master Roan Tithe was like that.
Damon felt a sickness well up in his stomach. Fledglings were a treasure. They were not soldiers. They were companions. He had heard a little of this vampire Roan Tithe, but he sensed that there was so much more that would cause him to hate the man. If he was not already struck down by Balthazar, then he would have done it himself. William's arms crossed over his chest, and he shuddered as he said,
He did unspeakable things to us, and the only person who stopped him was Balthazar. The Order did nothing. The other powerful house leaders did nothing. The Council did nothing. Only Balthazar stopped the things.
Damon wanted to tell him that there was no need to speak of the atrocities that were committed against him and the others, but his mouth remained stuck shut. He did not wish to interrupt the flow of William's words. William might need to speak these things, and he needed to hear. As king, he was to have protected them, but instead he had slept. The vampire child's voice steadied then, and he continued,
After that night, I determined that I would only follow those who had earned my loyalty and respect. I may have failed at times.
He swept one hand through the air.
But I keep my promise to myself.
Damon respected that. He had respected that William was willing to fight for his friends and house members, no matter how unworthy they might have been of such loyalty. William had clearly believed they were worthy, so he had stood up to an impossible-to-defeat enemy. William's eyes met Damon's, unblinking, as he challenged in a voice soft and low but full of conviction.
So you might be king. You may be the first among equals, but that does not mean I will follow you. You said that you would have killed Heath and Celine for less than coming into Night Valley and attacking Julian and Christian. But I wonder how much less. Are you a tyrant too? Will you seek to abuse your power? Do you want slaves, followers, worshippers? Or are you like the king they write of in the stories that Arceus tells us, who will raise all of us up.
Arceus tells stories of me. What kind, I wonder? Arceus and Isabel held themselves very still. This was the moment of truth. Who was he really? The king, yes, but what kind? That latter question was the one that William was asking. In his youth, he might have struck down this boy for speaking to him in such a direct way. But time had shown him that wisdom curbed one's acting out on foolish pride. And besides, he admired William all the more for standing up and stating what many others would simply be too frightened to ask. He kept his gaze on William, softening his tone perceptibly. I am not the king because I say I am. I am only the king if you recognize me as such. That recognition can never be earned by compulsion or force or violence. Not true recognition that you feel in your heart. William's pink lips parted in surprise. He felt a wave of relief mixed with happiness flow through the other two. They had already believed him good, or hoped he was. He reached out with one hand towards William's cherubic cheek in a silent request to touch him. William tipped his head, so that only the tips of Damon's fingertips were touching his smooth as silk skin. He guessed that this was a success, to touch William at all. But those are just words, William. Watch what I do, and make up your own mind, Damon said, and stroked that tender cheek once before drawing his hand away. William was wounded. He had been abused. Damon would have to win him over slowly. It might not work at all, but he would not harm this being more. William curled his arms around himself, looking thoughtful but still very uncertain. Damon made a motion to Isabel to rise and care for William. She got to her feet and placed an arm around William's slender shoulders. Damon bowed and told them, "Have a good rest of your evening." He then proceeded out of the coach house and into the garden with Arceus walking slightly behind him. He smiled wryly as, once again, every vampire who caught sight of him nude froze in place before pretending this wasn't unusual. Arceus, where is a place in the garden I might commune, where I will be inconspicuous? Damon asked as yet another couple of vampires stared at his groin.
I take back what I said about you being like Balthazar. He would have been strutting with all this attention.
Arceus murmured. Damon snorted. Perhaps I should send you in for my coat, though I must commune nude.
I will be happy to fetch it once you're settled.
Arceus offered. Arceus then led him to a side garden filled with a small, bubbling fountain that was still running despite the chill air. The grass was neatly raked, free of leaves. The grass was cold against his knees and calves as he knelt down.
Would you permit me the honor of praying with you after I get your coat?
Arceus asked. Praying? I am not praying, dear Arceus. I am restoring my power through connection to the earth, Damon answered. He paused for a moment and asked, Who do you pray to, Arceus? Arceus lowered his head.
Though exiled, I still consider myself a confessor of the order, and that means I pray to, well, to you.
Damon was the one to go very still this time. He realized then more than ever before that he needed to understand this world. Finally, he said, Please feel free to join me after you retrieve my coat. Arceus bowed and went to leave, but Damon called him back. And Arceus, can you begin to bring me any books, scrolls, or documents that explain what happened with the other immortals and the vampires up to the present? Arceus nodded, but then with a slight hesitation said,
I will bring you a device that will allow you to access a vast library. It's similar to one of the wells in Everdark.
Damon's eyebrows rose. Humanity has come so far. Or have vampires?
Both. Well, I'll leave you and return shortly.
Arceus said with another bow, and this time he disappeared into the rest of the garden. Damon laid his hands on his knees, palms towards the heavens, and let his eyelids shut. He then reached for the power of the earth.
Though exiled, I still consider myself a confessor of the order, and that means I pray to, well, to you.
Arceus's voice drifted over to Fiona. Her heart began to race the moment that she heard him. She swallowed and kept her face neutral in expression, as Confessors Donato and Sloane were looking to her to know how to react. And she didn't kid herself that one or both of them might be eager to report to Caemorn any misstep she made. Being emotional about Arceus would easily be considered a punishable offense by the prickly and precise preceptor.
Who is Arceus talking to? I don't recognize him as a member of House Ravenscroft,
Donato asked from beside her. They were on the roof of the nearest house to the Ravenscroft mansion. It was half a mile away, but she didn't dare go any closer, though the listening equipment and their own enhanced sensors weren't giving them very clear feedback. Yet even here, she felt exposed, though they had amulets that came from the Helm bloodline, so they should be invisible unless they moved. Yet merely being invisible didn't mean they didn't give off sense that the House Ravenscroft vampires could pick up on a stray gust of wind. But they needed to know what was going on in there. Yet she had been so overcome with just hearing Arceus again that she hadn't actually been listening, let alone analyzing what he'd said or who he'd been speaking to. Fiona internally cursed herself. Sloane added,
He said he prayed to this vampire. And is the guy naked?
Fiona repositioned her high-powered binoculars to catch sight of this allegedly naked vampire that Arceus was speaking to. Arceus had lovers of both sexes, so it was conceivable what they had arrived upon was a loving session. Why else would this other vampire be naked?
Maybe just an exhibitionist.
But she immediately discounted this.
An exhibitionist that Arceus prays to? He only prays to...
Her binoculars focused on a single male, naked figure who was kneeling perfectly still on a rectangular section of grass near a fountain. Even from this distance, she could see the perfection of his form. He was big, as Arceus liked his men, but also lean of line. He had thick, black hair with natural waves. His features reminded her of Greek statues of the gods. His head was bowed and his eyes were closed. She suddenly wished very much that he would open those eyes. Arceus was nowhere in sight. He must have left. Another reason to curse herself for losing track of things.
What the hell?
Sloane hissed, and there was a slight scraping sound as she moved on the roof. Fiona grimaced and was about to caution her to be silent when she realized what had caused the woman to react in that way. Tendrils, red and glowing, were erupting from the earth all around this figure. They wound around the naked vampire's body in a lover's caress. Their ends sank into his flesh and they began to pulse.
What is that?
Donato gasped.
It is like the earth itself is giving him its life-blood.
Fiona whispered out loud. And at that moment, as if he had heard her, the vampire's eyes opened. They were as red and glowing as the tendrils that surrounded him. He looked right at her. Fiona grabbed the two confessors by the napes of their necks and yanked them off of the roof. They let out startled gasps as she launched them into the air. They fell the 2 stories to the ground, but each of them landed on their feet.
Run,
She told them, her heart in her throat.
Run as fast as you can.
The 3 of them rabbited into the darkness. She wasn't certain when it would be safe to stop running. She wasn't sure it ever would be.
Arceus would only pray to King Damon. King Damon. That was him. Oh, by the immortals, that was him.
Join us next time for episode 25. Fine.
There's another part of the membership content on wraithrain.com that I haven't talked about in a long while, I think, and that is the manga. I love manga, and I post several pages each month according to the schedule. Working with these talented artists is so much fun. They get to produce their best work without a grueling schedule, and sometimes you'll get manga that is too hot for Amazon, such as The Werewolf Next Door, which is straight up sexy times for over 100 pages, with werewolves. If manga or reading isn't your thing, but you still would like to join to support the podcast, Thank you so much. Getting to run Wraith Rain is my dream job. And even though we're not even through volume 2 of the podcast on the public podcast, but we are going to be on the private one, just so you know, we're committed to all 147 chapters of it being produced at the high quality you've experienced so far. So until next week, I can't wait to speak with you again. Take care, guys. Bye.
The Everdark podcast by X Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.